We're live.
Okay. This is Mark, Chair of the Biz Advisory Board, calling the meeting to order at 1:06 p.m. on April 10th, 2020. I want to thank everybody for being able to attend and for your time, and I hope everybody's safe and well during this difficult time. Let's go ahead and start with roll call when you're ready, Caitlin.
John Dixon,
I'm here.
John Glidewell,
Here.
Marcus Magdaleno,
Here.
Travis Scott,
Present.
Jim Keenan, Planning and Building.
Caitlin Schaefer, Planning and Building.
Okay, wonderful. Moving on to agenda item 3A, approval of minutes from the January 7th, 2020 meeting. I'm looking for a motion.
I have reviewed and I move to approve the meetings from January 7th, 2020.
Wonderful. I'll second that. Do we have any discussion regarding those minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor? Because of the video, do we have to do a roll call vote?
Yes, that would be recommended.
Okay, so let's see. My first time doing this, but so John Dixon?
Yes.
Okay. John Glidewell?
Yes.
And Marcus Magdaleno is a yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Moving on to 3B, approval of the minutes from the March 2nd meeting. Looking for a motion.
I will make that motion to approve the minutes for March 2nd.
Oh, sorry. If everybody before they speak can state their name for the record. And I guess we're going to do that every time we speak, right, Caitlin?
Yes, please.
Okay. Who could you?
This is John Glidewell. I move to approve the minutes of March 2nd, 2020.
I'll go ahead. Marcus Magdaleno will second. Any discussion? Hearing none. We'll take this to a vote. John Dixon?
Yes.
John Glidewell?
Yes.
Marcus Magdaleno? Yes. Wonderful. All right. On to agenda item number 4, communications received and filed. Do we have any, Caitlin?
The motion carried unanimously, and no, there have not been any public comments received.
Oh, sorry. Communications received and filed, item agenda number 4. We're not to matters of the public yet. Is that what?
No correspondence has been received.
Okay. On to agenda item 5. Any matters from the public? Any members of the public have matters they'd like to bring up at this point? Hearing none, we will move on from agenda item 5 to agenda item 6A, review for the upcoming fiscal year 2020-21. I presume, since we've got this, the recommendations in timely manner, thank you, Travis, that we've all had a chance to review them. So my suggestion is that I'll call off each section and we'll have discussion on it. If I hear no discussion, we'll move on. If you need a moment to review it, if you hadn't had a chance to yet, then just verbalize that you need a moment. Otherwise, I'd like to move through this efficiently and promptly. So, any questions from any of the other members?
John Dixon, no questions.
Go ahead, John Dixon.
Oh, I said no questions.
Oh, no questions. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the recommendations from the previous year. or I'm sorry, from this current year. The 2019-20 recommendations will start with item A1. Is there any questions or discussion from any of the board members regarding this, this previous recommendation and the response?
Marcus, this is John Glidewell. Are we going to discuss each number or just this section in general to ask questions on?
I'm going to go through each one. So each recommendation, so we have a chance to potentially discuss any and all of them.
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything to discuss at the moment for this first section.
Okay. Hearing no further requests of questions or discussion on item A1, we'll move on to item A2 from the bid advisory recommendations from 2019-20, 2019-2020 as well. So sorry, A2. Do any members of the board have any questions or discussions regarding recommendation A2?
No.
Okay, I had one, for clarification, was there's been no change, Travis, to from this response? There's been no change or contact with Civitas since formulating this response?
No.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Okay, on to item A3. Does any of the board members have any questions or discussion regarding item A3? Hearing none, I'll move on to item A4. Any questions or discussions regarding item A4? This is Marcus Magdaleno, and I have one question. Just clarification on the last two, let's see, on the last two sentences. Hold on. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. This is a clarification on the last two sentences of the response. With the current status of the business in Mendocino County, staff does not believe that implementation that by this date, however, are adjusting to implement in the 2021 fiscal year. Can I just get clarification on what exactly that means, Travis?
Basically, what I'm saying is that, with the current state of business due to COVID-19, we're not going to be able to implement this by the beginning of this fiscal year.
Okay. Should we reference that?
I am totally open to it. I just kind of left it vague. I didn't know how to address COVID at all in this report and wanted to kind of get your guys' feedback.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth mentioning, this is also, in addition to being guidelines, this is also historical records. So if someone 5 years from now were to open this up and be like, I can't remember when the pandemic was, if there's reference to it, then they'll know what the effects were from this, a reference from this report. So I would suggest that we go ahead and reference it and use the terms COVID-19 as the accurate name of the virus. Any discussion of input from the other board members?
Yeah, Marcus, this is John Glidewell. I agree. I think we should reference it, like you said, for historical reasons. And do we want to agree on how we reference it within the report? Should we say COVID-19 or we want to say the COVID-19 pandemic? I kind of thought the word pandemic sort of has a little bit of gravity to it. So I would say that would probably be the way to go, is just to reference COVID-19 pandemic.
Dixon?
So how about, sorry.
John Dixon, any input?
I agree with that. I mean, yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, I agree with that. I think calling it out, you made me, just realize that someday this is going to be a memory. I think I just thought of that for the first time. So referencing it correctly, thinking about 5 years in the future is I agree with that. And I think defining it as a pandemic is good. I agree with that.
Okay, Travis, can you go ahead and any point at which we reference the pandemic, go ahead and word it as the COVID-19 pandemic?
Certainly.
Thank you. So we'll restate that sentence, including that.
So I'm changing as we're talking. So here's how I've changed it. And it reads, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and its relation to doing business in Mendocino County, VMC staff doesn't believe that implementation will happen by this date.
Does that sound good to John Glidewell, John Dixon?
This is John Gladwell. Yes, that sounds better.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments or discussion on item A4 response?
This is John Glidewell. Just looking at that very last sentence, it looks like maybe it needs to be a completed thought. Just so we're addressing that now. Travis, do you have any final notes to add to that last sentence there?
I can come up with something to make it more clear.
Okay, yeah.
At this moment, unless you have suggestions right at this moment, let me play with it a little bit.
Great. No, I think it's sort of just a truncated thought, and we'll want to have a full sentence put there at some point. I just don't know when we're going to have it there to review and then finalize. So I just wanted to mention it as we're going through.
I agree with Marcus Magdaleno. I agree with John Glidewell, and we will have, let's see, we'll have two more chances or one more chance to review this report. I believe we'll have the April meeting. Oh wait, we are in the April meeting. Sorry, we'll have the May meeting to review.
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 17th. That was the one that we calendared. We did not schedule any for May.
Okay, so we have one upcoming meeting on April 17th, correct?
That is correct. That's next Friday.
And no meeting scheduled for May?
We did not schedule any meetings for May due to time frames.
So we intended to review and potentially finalize, approve a final version of the bid report in the April 17th meeting.
The final report was set to be approved today, or if not able to be done today, the 17th was put on the calendar to allow for the board members of VMC to put in their input, as I understand it.
Okay, so, and hopefully I didn't miss this, but we haven't been given a copy of the full report draft in its entirety yet. That's correct? Okay. For the record, Travis Scott is nodding his head yes.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to get to unmute. Yes, that was in the packet or in the link that Caitlin distributed.
The full report draft?
The full report draft.
Oh, my error for missing it.
It's a separate document from this. That's right.
It is. Oh, well, I'm a little embarrassed for missing that then.
But in it, there's a couple of graphs missing. You know, when you look at it, Marcus. So it's not complete exactly, but it looks like it's close. Is that right, Travis?
Correct. So there, and we can discuss that when we get there, because there is some things that need to be finished that I'm waiting on information from other organizations.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so it is on the website? The link with where the agenda was?
That's correct.
So the bid advisory board webpage, and then there's meetings and agendas, and there's a draft annual report, and below it is the recommendations, a sub bullet, which is what we were talking about. But the draft annual report is right above it. There's a link right above it.
All right, wonderful. So then when we finish going through the recommendations, we'll do a review of the draft report in its entirety and then move on to the next agenda item 6B. So my apologies for not having a chance to have reviewed it yet. So I will be doing so during the meeting as we go through it. But luckily, John Dixon and John Glidewell have had a chance to review it previously. Okay, so we were moving on to the recommendations actionable by the county, the review of the 1920 fiscal year recommendations and their responses. So starting with item B1, in that section, do we have any discussion or questions from the members of the board, bid advisory board, regarding B1?
No.
Hearing none, I will move on to item B2. Any discussion or questions from the board members regarding B2? Hearing none, we'll move on to B3. Any discussion or questions from board members regarding B3? Hearing none, move on to B4. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, this is John Dixon. So we have highlights here, and it's not complete, I guess, in the version I'm looking at.
Same here. It doesn't look like it's complete. We have the response. So I presume that this highlighted yellow was what we had previously asked for, and the response below is Adrian's response. Is that correct, Caitlin?
That is correct.
And I left it highlighted because I was curious from county staff to know if this is still going to be a reality with the Board of Supervisors not hearing anything other than COVID-19 issues.
Okay. Okay, and if I'm reading this response properly, am I to understand that it's suggesting that a recommendation need to be coming from MCTC in order to adopt this recommendation? Travis?
Okay, and we're talking about B5, about Point Arena, correct?
No.
No, sorry, we're on response B4.
Okay.
This recommendation is appropriate from the MCTC through the annual report.
Yes.
So Adrian is in fact saying that our recommendation in this report isn't going to be effective, as it needs to come from MCTC annual report?
That's what I'm taking from it.
Okay. John, any questions or input? Do you feel that we need to leave this recommendation in or remove it?
Well, okay, this is Dixon. So the intent, as has been done before and now, I mean, it sounds like what we're looking for is some entity or some person to work towards helping with learning about ways to fund tourism promotion relative to the other markets. I mean, maybe what I'm saying is that the recommendation is asking the wrong thing. What we need to ask for is what we want, which is somebody from the county to help MCTC or some other entity to accomplish this. And so what the response is saying is that let's see, planning and building services required as the board has authority to create. I mean, we need to rewrite number 4. If that's the answer to it already, don't we have to rewrite number 4? I mean,
yes, we're correct. Apologies. This is a review of the previous recommendation, so I'm sorry, we cannot remove it. Yeah.
Okay. So this would be moving forward. We need to ask for what we want, and what this is a response. I understand now. Yeah. Okay.
So
Sorry.
then in fact, we need to potentially re-recommend this in the new recommendations, reworded as you suggest. Yes?
Yeah, and I'm just jumping forward. I think we did, didn't we? But
This is
we'll get.
John Gladwell. Yeah, I think we did.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll discuss that when we get to it and make sure it's worded as we want. So moving on then,
Before we move on, sorry, Marcus, this is John Gladwell. Can I ask a question?
yes, please.
Okay, so just as far as finality of this report, even though it's listed as last year's recommendations, do we want to clean up that highlighted portion and change some verbiage so it will be listed as we have asked county staff for a response to this recommendation, and then the response is listed, or is there a better way to approach that? I'm open to suggestions, just curious how we can clean that up a little bit.
Travis, is the responses and this format exactly as it is in the draft report?
In the draft report, which these responses are not in the report yet.
Okay, gotcha.
That's why that's a separate document.
Gotcha. So then to address John's question, will we remove that yellow highlighted section?
Yes, highlights will all be removed in the final copy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that works great. Thanks.
All righty, moving on to item B5. Any questions or comments regarding the response to this previously recommended item?
Yeah, I would say this is Dixon. Travis, can you talk about the answer here in yellow? Because as we were talking in the last meeting, that it was still a process. So this is just the current status. Is that what I see?
So this is the current status. And that was, sorry, I was ahead of you guys in my last comments by one recommendation, so I apologize. This was where I was asking if this timeline is still accurate with, the Board of Supervisors' current situation, being only that they are only addressing COVID-19 items. So I would look to Adrienne and her team to give us some direction on this timeline.
As we don't have Adrienne present, do we know, Caitlin, if this timeline is still potentially workable or if it's completely in the air? And keep in mind that the destination marketing organization, I guess, or to keep things legal, this process needs to happen in a timely manner, which it's supposed to happen.
I will need to check with Adrienne or the clerk of the board.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I will need to check with either Adrienne or the clerk of the board. I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you on the time frame at this time.
Okay.
But I would like to remind you guys to mute yourselves so that you don't run into the problem of not being able to unmute yourself because I've muted you.
Okay, so seeing as we are unsure as to whether this timeline will be the correct timeline, given the situation, I say we leave it and wait till we have further info before changing it or altering it. Sound good?
Well, I guess so. I mean, at some point we have, well, this is Dixon. At some point we have to finalize this, right? And it's going to we're going to have to pick a point in time where we put in here what it's going to be. And if our goal is to finalize this today, which I think it is, and then let the board of MCTC look at it so that it can go, on time. I don't know if we have time to wait for an answer. I mean, we have one more meeting and that's fine. And we can say this is a placeholder, when it goes to MCTC. I don't think it will, the content of this is not going to be any kind of big problem for them. I mean, if it has to adjust, if these dates have to adjust, it's not going to be something that they're not going to approve. So maybe we can look at this again, when we have more information in a couple of weeks, and then finalize it then. But I do think that we should get to the point today that we can get it so we can share it with the MCTC board. And as it is, if these are the dates the best that we have, given the reality of today, then we have to sort of call it. And then if on the 17th, once Adrienne or the clerk, answer that it can be, or it's going to be different, we'll put that in the final. If we're going to finalize it on the 17th, we said. So, I mean, I would leave it as it is for now. Ask Adrienne if there's any changes that are known right now, and then we'll include it as it is to the MCTC board. So it sounds like that's the goal, right?
This is Marcus Magdaleno. Yes, that is, thank you for clarifying that, John. It is important that we do come to somewhat of a finalized version of this draft that can be sent and reviewed as a courtesy to the MCTC board. And I might suggest actually then that we leave the schedule as is, but maybe down at the bottom, put a note that this schedule is potentially subject to change due to the COVID pandemic. Is that something John Dixon and John Glidewell would agree with?
Yes, I mean, for me, if we have another chance to update it, if it does already change, if they know that the schedule is going to change, it might not be able to change. It might have to be, given the laws, that it has to be done by a certain date there, and that's what this is backing up from. It might have to stay the same as far as this document, but I mean, yeah, a little disclaimer at the bottom probably doesn't hurt, especially if we don't have any control over it. Then it's going to be what it's going to be, right?
Yeah, this is John Gladwell. I agree.
Yeah. So I would be for putting a disclaimer at the bottom and then taking the opportunity on the 17th to try to finalize it as best we can. And then just the disclaimer will cover it if it ends up being different.
And this is Marcus Magdaleno. I agree. So Travis, can we go ahead and put that little disclaimer down at the bottom?
Just a moment. This is Caitlin Schaefer with Planning and Building. I reached Adrienne through the computer I have here. We lost our May 5th date for the Board of Supervisors. And we don't believe that it will be likely to go before July. We may be able to get one of the two meetings in, but we won't be able to do the public hearing for the levy.
This is Marcus Magdaleno. So yeah, sorry, I chimed in my comment about making sure that this is done in the proper timely manner was more in reference to getting the report finalized and done. Sorry, and then this schedule of getting Point Arena back in, of course, is an important topic. But since we don't know the schedule, then maybe we should remove. Maybe we can summarize the process, removing the dates and saying the dates are subject to, given the given situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Would that be? John? What do you think of that? Removing the dates and just keeping the process listed, giving the suggesting that the dates are tentative due to the COVID pandemic.
This is John Glidewell. Yeah, the purpose of this outline here is to give some context to this recommendation. Because there aren't any set dates that seem to be sticking right now, like we said, due to the disclaimer, I think it's good to have the outline included, but like you're saying, have date-specific information more generalized. And since this is basically listed for historical context, it probably won't have much impact on the report as a whole, I guess. So I would say we should be fine as long as we feel good about the verbiage and the outline as it supports that number 5 recommendation.
John Dixon, do you have any input?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the context as well. This is you know, last year's recommendation is that the, Board of Supervisors approve the reinstatement of City of Point Arena. I mean, maybe the answer can be, that it's in process. Um, you know, the steps that it needs to take are really not putting that context in, as John says, is good, but really the answer to this at this point is that it's in process. Dates are pending, like the purple highlight says there, you know, and we can put something about the COVID, thing. But when I just was rereading the actual recommendation, and I mean, the answer could be the response, or rather, it could be that it's in process and that it, or where it is in the process as of right now. I don't know. I don't want to get stuck on these dates because it's really not the most important part of the response. It's that, the recommendation is that Point Arena gets reinstated and that is in process. So, I'm in favor of taking out details of dates and for context.
This is Marcus Magdaleno. John, I'm in agreement. Maybe a one sentence summary of that this is in process, and then the process would be as follows, listing the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, removing the dates, and I don't know, referencing maybe meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, or just removing the dates. Travis, do you have any suggestions?
I would just turn it into sentence format as a summarization of the process with no timelines.
Yeah, I mean, can I don't know who has the answer to this, but can somebody just say what sort of where we are with Point Arena, like currently as of today? Because it's
Travis, you're muted.
Sorry, I was. That would really be something that Adrian could answer, but I can answer you to my knowledge, and to my knowledge is that the intention has been filed with the board. I could be wrong again, but we missed the 45-day window of noticing. And again, I could be wrong. We might not have been, resolution of intention may not have gone before the Board of Supervisors on March 10th, because that was, right at the beginning of Crazy Town.
And if the window was missed, is there a way to pick it up, or is it kind of you don't have to wait a year or anything like that? I mean, what are the ramifications of missing March dates? Does it just get pushed forward a little bit?
To my knowledge, again, it just gets pushed forward, correct.
So it would still be able to happen within the cycle that we're in with the bid. They would just pick it up at some point within the year. We don't have to wait till the renewal of the bid.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So just for clarification, Marcus, is the adopted bid that goes before the supervisors would be amended if Point Arena was approved to be reinstated. The amendment would happen. It doesn't need to be written into the law prior to the approval.
Correct.
Okay. So then, given that, I would suggest that we do just a 1 or 2 sentence summary that this is in process, and that the process is as follows. And we just continue to list the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step process, removing the dates. I think that's clear and concise. That's the way I'd want to read it.
That
John?
sounds good. Yeah, this is Dixon. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Do we want
John,
to? Go ahead, John Gladwell.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I agree. John Gladwell, I agree.
And Travis or Johns, do we want to come up with that sentence right now with Travis, or do we trust Travis to formulate it and prior to us approving the final?
I think Travis can wordsmith it. That's fine.
Okay. You good with that, Travis? All right,
Yeah.
moving on then. Any other discussion on item B5? Hearing none, moving on to the next section. This is recommendations actionable by Mendocino County Tourism Commission for the upcoming fiscal year 2020-2021. We'll go ahead and start with recommendation A1. Any questions or discussions from the board regarding recommendation A1? Hearing none, we'll move on to recommendation A2. Any questions or discussion from the board?
Sorry, can I go back? The last two words of number 1, is that a note or is that part of the recommendation? It says no changes.
Good question. What's that,
That's
Travis?
a note, because there was no changes noted in the last meeting to that.
So that's
all.
just, so you just remove it in the final.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Travis, is that consistent through this document? If we see blue underlined, that's just a note that will be removed from the final?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I'm looking at it on my screen, and so I don't see a blue underline. So, all right, sorry.
Oh. Okay, moving on to item A2. Any questions or discussion from the board regarding item A2?
This is John Gladwell. I just was curious if there were some updates on this item at all. It seems like there was, just some highlights need clarification here and there, and I didn't know if we had that clarification yet or if we're still waiting.
I do not have that clarification as of yet.
Caitlin, do we have any input from the county as to whether this this measure that was on the ballot passed or not? That's what we were waiting for, correct?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer.
So Marcus and Travis, this is John Gladwell. Is the goal for the report to hopefully have clarification before the final draft so we can put that in here? Or if that isn't available by the time we need to finalize it, do we want to have a placeholder for this, or how do we want to approach this item?
I'm sorry, there's nowhere where we can reference whether this measure passed on the county website, or is it still being tallied?
Let me check. Give me a moment. John Dixon, can you please mute your microphone when not speaking?
Well, I was just talking and apparently muted, so there's the answer. Okay.
John Dixon, do you have something to say?
I was told to mute, and then I was talking and I was apparently muted, so I'm not sure where that came from. Did you hear me typing? That was my question.
You are currently not muted, and we're getting some feedback when you're not speaking.
This is Marcus Magdaleno. So while Caitlin looks to see if she can find results of that measure, whether it passed or not, we might as well discuss the possibility if it did pass, then the response to this would be, in fact, well, there is no response. Sorry, this is a current recommendation. So we would just leave the recommendation as is then.
This is John Gladwell.
Go ahead, John Gladwell.
Yeah, I think that it sort of relies on the outcome of some of this information. Says depending on the outcome of the election, this ordinance change would be included with the point arena bid changes. It seems like maybe there's some domino effect for some of the other information in the report, or at least in these recommendations. Would that be fair?
These two are tied together.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like Caitlin may have more information for us. I don't know. Do we want to just move on and cycle back around to see if we can figure this out?
Marcus Magdaleno, maybe we operate under the assumption that, well, no, we don't want to operate under any assumption. I say, yeah, without knowing the outcome of it, we leave it. And maybe we empower Travis to leave it as is or remove it, depending on when we find out the outcome. Because if the measure didn't pass, then we, if I'm correct, the purpose of having this as a recommendation would be moot, right? So, so yeah, I'm for leaving it as is and giving Travis the power to, if we turn out the measure was not passed, removing it, and if the measure was passed, leaving it as is. John,
Just to let you guys know, Measure D did pass.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at too. It's 65%.
Nice. All right, you guys were sitting on that info this whole time? Just kidding. Okay, so then it did pass. So then we should remove all the depending ons and depending on the ballot things and leave this recommendation leave this recommendation in the document. Do we have any suggestions to alter, change it?
The only thing that I would bring up that I would like to leave it kind of as is for now with the yellow is, depending on the outcome of election, this ordinance change would be included with the Point Arena bid changes in May 2020. We need to confirm with Adrian what that timeline is going to be, when they would actually be submitted. So that's the only reason I'd like to leave it yellow currently.
When it would be submitted, Marcus Magdaleno, you mean when it would be submitted? Wouldn't it be submitted in the bid ordinance that's going before the supervisors?
No, it's got to have an intent to levy. It's got to follow the same process that Point Arena follows. So that's how they're tied together.
I see. Okay, so and once again, it can happen midway through the fiscal year as an amendment to the current bid ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. So do we need to put verbiage explaining that, the timeline situation?
I can use the same summary kind of timeline as we're going to use in Point Arena, if that works for this committee.
That works for me, Marcus Magdaleno.
That works for me, John Gladwell.
Yeah, and for me, I think you can put in the whole process, or just stating that, just because it was approved or passed, well, that was like the first step, right? And so there's all these other steps that then have to happen before they're rolled into it and before TOT is collected and all that stuff, right? So and then list what the steps are. So the vote, the passing of the vote was the first step in the process, and it was, it passed. Maybe note that just clearly like that, and then say what the steps are, and maybe even notate for clarity that it follows the same steps as the previous, as number 2 or whatever it is. It follows the same steps as adding back in Point Arena, something like that, just so that it's very clear. That's how I would do it.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm in agreement with John Dixon. A quick summary of the process, and that the first step has been achieved and the following steps listed. All right, any other discussion regarding item A2?
Question. So Mark or Travis, when you said that they're tied together, are they going to try to do both at the same time within the same process, or it's the same process and the processes might happen separately? Like one would start and then the other would start later. Or are they waiting? I guess my question is there a reason that the county would wait for any reason for the Point Arena work so that they go through the process simultaneously? Is that what you mean?
No, it's just much, it takes that much less time to put them both forward and have PBS sponsor both at one time rather than doing them separately. They are not tied together. The only thing they would be tied together for is the timeline of getting them accomplished.
Marcus Magdaleno, therefore, obviously for the sake of efficiency, if they were on the same timeline, going to for the same meetings, approved along the same, it would be much more efficient. Travis, do you feel that we should put a recommendation along those lines in here?
No, that's already the plan of county staff.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or discussions regarding item A2? Hearing none, moving on to item A3 for the recommendations for the upcoming 2020-2021 fiscal year. Any discussion or questions regarding item A3? Hearing none, moving on to item A4. Any questions or discussion regarding A4?
This is John Gladwell. I just have a question about the last sentence. This will allow staff and the board to properly develop a continuation of the current very successful strategic plan. I think we should choose or consider a different descriptor for the strategic plan other than very successful. It just sounds like it's more subjective. And maybe we can choose favorable or preferred, or even leave out the word very. But I don't know that it's the right message for that item.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm in agreement with John Glidewell. Perhaps we just remove very successful and just continuation of the current strategic plan. If someone wants to evaluate how successful it is, they would have other methods of input and data that they could use to determine that. So unless Travis has another suggestion, or
Nope, I noted that. Thank you.
so
I think this is Dixon. I recall that in the discussion prior that Travis said that one of the reasons to extend it is because the current one is working well for everybody, right? And I think Travis, am I recalling that right? And that's probably, I think, where these words came from. It was sort of part of the point, and maybe we do want to say it maybe in a different way, because I agree it does look like sort of clapping yourself on the back a bit, ourselves on the back, that rather. But to say that the idea is that why fix something that's not broken? Like, this plan is working, let's extend it, let's keep going with it. It's working for the board and constituents, apparently, things like that. So I think that's the intent behind the words very successful. Am I right, Travis?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just take a second with this. Give me a second.
Yeah, and this is John Gladwell. John Dixon, I agree. I think it would be nice to qualify the sort of perspective on how well the strategic plan is working. And so I think it is okay to describe that. And maybe we can choose of the current well-received strategic plan, or something along those lines that still implies that it is working well. So don't fix what's not broken. So I think we should choose something else.
Yeah, maybe something like the continuation of the current strategic plan, which finish the sentence, which has I don't know. I don't have good words right now. I'm not being very creative. But I think, Travis, maybe you can look at it again. I would leave it to you to sort of wordsmith, because I think the intent is right. And we've already voiced it, so I won't say it again. But maybe take another crack at that, and we'll look at it.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Travis.
okay, so we have any further discussion on this, or we're leaving it in Travis's good, capable hands? I mean, I'd say even just if we wanted to address that, it is a good working strategic plan. Maybe we just remove very, and for the board to properly develop the continuation of the current successful strategic plan. Doesn't sound like you're patting yourself on the back so much if you remove the word very.
Well, successful again is subjective. I would say the strategic plan that, has been in use for X number of years, that I don't want to say by all measures, by the board and staff and stakeholders, has been executed, and is in a format that works for a lot of people. I mean, I know that staff has taken on the direction of quantifying success and measurable, measuring success against the strategic plan, and is really using it as a working document. It's not something that's sitting on the shelf. And in that way, it is working and it is successful. But I think, and that's the point here, is that using something that has worked for the organization, maybe just something like that. The current strategic plan has been working for the organization very well, and we recommend, because this is a recommendation, right, that staff work to continue to use it, to continue it, instead of starting new. There's no need to start new. So that's the intent. I'm not sure what language to use there. Maybe there's some words that we've all said, Travis, that you can use. But if you could, come up with something that shows what the intent is. And I think I'm glad we're discussing it, because I think it's worth stating. It's worth explaining what we are trying to say by the words very successful. And those are subjective words, even successful by itself, in my opinion. I think it's actually worth explaining. So if you could take a crack at it with that intent, I think that's.
I've got it. Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Now moving on to item A5. Any questions or discussions from members of the board or staff regarding A5? Hearing none, we'll move on to A6. Any questions or discussions regarding item A6?
So this is Dixon. So is this the one that comes from the one we talked about before?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not asking who we were asking before. Instead, what we're saying is, let me find it here.
So what we're asking is that MCTC make a recommendation via its annual report. I mean, this is basically how it goes, to the Board of Supervisors to create this ad hoc committee and ask them if they would, assign county staff or elected, county elected officials, et cetera.
Okay.
And Marcus Maglino, it does seem very clear within that first statement, that MCTC will instigate the formation of an ad hoc committee. But that doesn't say anything about the annual report in here. Should we clarify that?
Well, I think that's am I unmuted? I think that's a matter of process, and that's something that I would have to work through as an organization with the county.
That's Marcus Maglino. That sounds good. We wouldn't want to get too specific and tie our hands in the regards to that process. So I like the wording on this one. I did have one question. The blue parts, the underlined blue parts, are part of the report, not to be removed.
Mine does not have any underlined blue parts on item 6.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, county staff, county elected officials. So the last sentence, in fact, then is explore any and all possible ways to increase revenue. My one input on that was to add for tourism promotion, unless that feels redundant to staff and members of the board. But I thought it'd be more clear to say explore any and all possible ways of increasing revenue for tourism promotion, not just revenue in general. Any questions or comments regarding that input from staff or board?
This is John Gladwell. Travis, I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
I was going to say I may have made a few changes since I sent this over in my, but mine says revenue for tourism promotion.
And I think,
Okay, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, John.
yeah, I just don't think it's a new sentence, right? After MCTC staff, take out the period, and then explore as part of the sentence. So it should be, the sentence is the bid advisory board also recommends the committee to be comprised of XYZ to explore any and all possible ways of increasing revenue for tourism promotion now. But anyway, the last sentence as it reads right now is not a complete sentence. So it needs to be just fixed so that it's part of the, the whole sentence. Does that make sense what I'm saying? At least the version I'm looking at.
Magdaleno, Travis, is that what your version says? Removes the period and says after MCTC staff to explore? Travis?
Can I share my screen so you guys can see what I'm seeing?
Yes, please.
Okay, one moment. Number one. So is this what we're talking about right here?
Yes, except in the version we're looking at, there's, and maybe it's blue underlined in somebody's version, it says after where your cursor is sitting there, it says explore any and all possible ways of increasing revenue, period. It's not a sentence, it's just
So I think
It's referred to up above. And sorry, Travis, this is Marcus Magdaleno. John Dixon, it is referred to, that sentence got moved to make the first sentence of the recommendation more complete, as we wanted to do, to make sure that the first sentence has the recommendation in it. So it looks like the first sentence covers that, to explore potential ways to enhance revenue for tourism promotion. Then it just lists the remaining recommendation lists what we suggest the committee be made of. Is that correct, Travis?
yes.
Are you seeing that, John?
all right. So in his shared version, it says investigate and explore potential ways to enhance, okay? And then it looks like somebody, maybe Travis, you made a note at one point, but if I'm understanding what the last thing I'm looking at says, any and all possible ways, if that's what we're trying to say here, so the first sentence should say to investigate and explore not just potential ways, but any and all possible ways of increasing revenue. I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing, but I don't see it in the final version. It still says potential. It doesn't say any and all. And if the point of the note is that somebody wanted it to say any and all instead of potential, just potential, then I see you're making the change as we speak. So I'll stop.
John Dixon, you are able to see the screen?
I can see his screen, yeah.
Okay, great, yeah. And then also, I like that edit. Also, Travis, the first three words, MCDC will instigate. Shouldn't that be instigate, not investigate? The formation of the ad hoc committee to investigate and explore any and all potential ways to enhance revenue for tourism promotion. All right, I think that looks good. John Dixon, John Gladwell, you good with number 6?
Yeah, the only note, this is John Gladwell, is when we discussed this in our last meeting, I know we did go back and forth on this and trying to convey what we mean by any and all. And we thought that any and all plus the word potential was sort of redundant, but that we removed potential and included possible, which is how it is on the draft that was sent. So I don't know if we want to change the word potential to possible ways. That was the only note that I saw that was different in that last sentence. So I'm fine with either way.
All right.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm in agreement. I mean, potential and possible feel interchangeable to me. So it really just comes down to how we want it wordsmith.
So I like the possible word, this is Dixon. So, but going back now, because we had investigate and instigate, I have a question. So if it's MCTC will instigate the formation of, if that is the intent, then it should just say MCTC will form an ad hoc committee. If the intent is that MCTC will investigate the formation of, meaning, is this something that, it's stronger to say will form if that's the intent, as opposed to will instigate the formation of. Does that make sense? I mean, what are we trying to say here? Is the recommendation that you guys look into it, or is it to actually do it?
Marcus Magdaleno, I guess it all depends on whether the ad hoc committee can be formed by MCTC or whether it needs to be formed by the Board of Supervisors. My impression and understanding was this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the ad hoc committee needed to be formed by the Board of Supervisors, in which case MCTC instigating it would be the start of the process. But do we know, Travis, or Caitlin, if this kind of ad hoc committee needs to be formed officially by the Board of Supervisors?
I would have to defer to Caitlin or Adrian exactly, but my understanding is that we can form it under VMC as an ad hoc committee. But if we want county officials, Board of Supervisors, or county staff to be included in that, then the Board of Supervisors are the only ones that can assign that.
So I'm looking
Marcus,
up,
go ahead, John Dixon.
I'm looking up at number 4, the blue, the answer to the previous, and that's what it says. It says there's no response needed from planning and building because the Board of Supervisors, I guess, only the Board of Supervisors has the authority to create a working group or ad hoc committees within the county. So that means it's just stating above what Marcus just said. Well,
this is Marcus. I feel that it's very important that county staff and elected staff, one of the Board of Supervisors, potentially be on this ad hoc committee. So I would suggest that we, if the case is that's the only way to get county staff and elected officials on this committee, the only way to do that is by getting it approved and formed by the Board of Supervisors. Then I think that item number 6 is stated correctly. John, do you have any comments on that?
No, so instigate the formation. Okay, so it's not investigate anymore, which makes sense but it's to instigate or initiate the formation of the committee that needs to be created by the county in some way, is what we're saying, if they're going to be able to participate. So maybe we say that somewhere in here too.
Perhaps in that first sentence, MCTC will instigate the formation of a county appointed ad hoc committee or a Board of Supervisors appointed ad hoc committee to investigate and explore.
Okay, so we keep going back and forth. It would be a committee under Visit Mendocino County. It would be an ad hoc committee under MCTC, excuse me, I'll use that for clarity. But if we want county members, we have to ask the Board of Supervisors to appoint them or give them the direction to join the MCTC ad hoc. So it's not a county ad hoc, it's an MCTC ad hoc that we're asking the Board of Supervisors to assign staff or officials, etc., to join.
Okay.
Wait, Mark Magdaleno, hold on one second, John. So then it looks like we've got 2 different recommendations here. We've got one that we recommend MCTC not instigate, but actually form an ad hoc committee, and then either a sub recommendation under that MCTC pursue or getting county staff, county elected officials on this board.
To me, that's pretty clear through the two recommendations that you're saying.
Yeah, I would say this, if I can speak, Dixon here. So MCTC will form, well, what do we say? Hang on a second, give me a second here. The top of this says the bid advisory board sets forth the following recommendations to be actionable by MCTC during the fiscal year. And it says MCTC will recommend that MCTC form an ad hoc committee. That MCTC form an ad hoc committee. That's how I would say that first part. All right. Not instigate the formation of, but will form an ad hoc committee, which says it's under MCTC. It's forming its own ad hoc, to Travis's point, to do these things, which we've already talked about, period. And then the bid advisory, we also recommend that the ad hoc committee be comprised of, and I have no changes to, XYZ. But I agree then, it's clear. So the first sentence says, we recommend that they form an ad hoc committee to do these things. And we also recommend that they include county staff and elected officials and these other people. Okay, period. That's it. It's 2 sentences. And I think then very clear. Did you get that, Travis? Oh, you're typing as we go, aren't you? I see.
Marcus Magdaleno. So then later, searching through the recommendations actionable by the county, do we have a recommendation that we recommend the county appoint staff and a board of supervisors? We do have that, don't we?
Yeah, that's in the second sentence. Still.
Okay. Yeah. Then this recommendation seems pretty clear.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, so do we have any further discussion on item A6, or do we all like that new worded? I really like that we can see the document that you're working on, Travis. This seems like a much more efficient way to do it, so we can all read it.
So MCTC form an ad hoc committee to investigate and explore any and all possible ways to engine. Also recommends the ad hoc committee be comprised of period. Okay, print it.
All right, hearing that we are all good with item A6, any questions or comments on item A7?
Is there a 7?
Yes, A7, that the MCTC Board of Directors engage in a discussion and potential action item, adjusting the current MCTC board meeting schedule that would allow members of the Board of Supervisors to attend. I don't really see the purpose of at their discretion, but the point of this to me is that these boards are involved with each other and they shouldn't have conflicting schedules in case. And it's also to go to the point in case any of the MCTC board members wanted to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting. It goes both ways. It's so that there's no conflict between these two boards that are involved with each other. So I don't know quite how to word that. I just wanted you to kind of understand that's my point of view on this item.
Before we move on, I'd like to let everybody know that during the share screen, we are not broadcasted with our names or video showing. So if you could please say who's speaking, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, we will do our best to remember to, sorry, Marcus Magdaleno speaking. Thank you, Caitlin. We'll do our very best to make sure we verbalize our names before speaking. Marcus Magdaleno. So Caitlin, are you talking about the live stream on the YouTube Mendocino County channel?
Yes, I am. I have it up on my secondary computer.
And I presume, Marcus Magdaleno speaking, I presume that that channel's seeing what we see on the screen.
They are a little bit behind us, but yes, they are seeing the documents as we review them currently.
Okay, great.
I have no changes to number 7. So John Dixon here, I have no changes to 7. I would just note, though, that number 7 is not on the draft. I see it on Travis's screen share, but I don't see it on the draft that was published, unless I'm missing it.
That could have been my error in sending an incorrect or old version to Caitlin. So if that is the case, it's my fault.
Okay, I think then I'll just use your screen share for the remainder. Thank you.
As it sounds like there might have been some changes to the document since getting it sent via email, then yes, it's probably best if we refer to the on-screen document provided by Travis. My one continual comment on number 7 is that it's stating to allow members of the Board of Supervisors to attend, but once again, it goes both ways. It's to allow any members of the MCTC board or Board of Supervisors to attend the other board's meetings, to have no conflict. So it's more that the MCTC board reschedule its regular meeting to not conflict with any Board of Supervisors meetings. Is more to the point, I think, of that recommendation, in my opinion. Can we reword that if John and John are in agreement with?
Do you want to say? I can't tell if you can hear me. Can you hear me? This is John Dixon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
John Dixon, we can hear
Okay.
you.
So, if the intent is that both entities or both boards would have the ability then to attend each other's meetings if that's desired, then say that, right? So MCTC Board of Directors engage in discussion and potential action item to adjust their board meeting schedule
To not conflict with any regular scheduled Board of Supervisors meetings.
to be on a set schedule that would allow them to, both the county and the MCTC board, to attend each other's meetings, period, I guess. I mean, if that's the intent, just rewrite it in a way that makes that, instead of saying the whole thing of, supervisors attend MCTC meetings and MCTC board members attending supervisor meetings, just say each other's meetings to shorten it, because that's the intent, right? Is to change the schedule so they're not concurrent, with the purpose being that they could attend each other's meetings if desired, or when it was warranted, or whatever,
Marcus Magdaleno speaking. Yes, and I kind of feel like maybe that should be a second sentence, that MCT Board of Directors engage a discussion and potential action item adjusting the current MCT board meeting schedule to not conflict with any regular scheduled Board of Supervisors meetings. This would allow members of either board to attend related board meetings. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, sounds good. So says John Dixon.
Marcus, can you give me that last again? I was typing, sorry.
This would allow members of either board to attend the others. This will allow members to related board meetings or meetings. Help finish the sentence. To attend related board meetings, to attend
Let me think about that one and come back to it.
But I do like to be just clear and concise on the first sentence, and I like that. MCT Board of Directors, we recommend that the MCTC Board of Directors engage a discussion and potential action item adjusting the current MCT board meeting schedule to not conflict with any Board of Supervisor meetings. Yeah.
And then I'll work on finishing the last sentence when I come up with something that sounds appropriate.
Okay, John, are you good with that?
So maybe just finish a sentence by saying, so that they could attend each other's meetings.
John Dixon speaking.
Thank you. Yes, this is Dixon. So just, so that they could attend each other's meetings, as not, I won't say as necessary or as desired, but something like that. I mean, you can put it in the same sentence. You could say for the purpose of, or you could just say so that they can attend each other's meetings as needed or desired, something like that.
Noted. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, moving on to section B of the 2021 recommendations. We'll start with B1. Shoot. Any discussion or questions regarding item B1? Hearing none, moving on to B2. Any questions or comments for B2?
I have a question. I'm sorry, this is Dixon on 1.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Marcus Magdaleno, going back to question 1 in section B. Go ahead, John Dixon.
Well, isn't A saying the same thing? Isn't it saying the same thing twice, or am I reading that wrong? The county shall assign staff to sit in the proposed meeting from 6 above. Recommend that a member of the county board be appointed to sit on the aforementioned. It seems redundant.
County staff is not the same as an elected official, which would be a board of supervisor. So we're asking two separate things here. We're asking one, that there be staff from the county on this ad hoc committee, and separately that one of the board of supervisors be included on this ad hoc committee. We have previously in recommendations just given 2 recommendations within the one recommendation versus creating a sub A category. So for the sake of consistency, if we wanted just to remove the A and add that it is also recommended that this ad hoc committee include a member of the county board of supervisors.
If my memory serves me properly, we wanted that to be of note, that it included a board of supervisors, so that's why we brought it down.
Okay, and I do like the fact that Marcus Magdaleno speaking. I do like the fact that it stands on its own. If the board of supervisors decides to adopt item 1 but not include item A, that gives them the option.
This is John Dixon. I would make it number 2 then. I think that it's a sub thing. It means it's related to, which it is, but it's actually a second. It's confusing how it is, and it could have been me who asked for this. I don't remember. So, but now that when I look at this, to me it references above, and that's why I thought at first it was redundant. So, staff is the point, and a supervisor of the board of the county, rather. So, is the second, and they're. It's also in number 6 above too. It says county staff and county elected officials. So I would make it, instead of A, I would make it number 2.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm amenable to that.
John Gladwell, that sounds good to me.
Change has been made.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion on items B1 or B2? Oops. Hearing none, let's move on to item B3.
This is John Gladwell. I have a comment. I'm still working off of the draft, which it does look like there's missing information from what's on Travis's screen. So I'm going to just read the additional writing that's been placed under number 3 real quick before I respond.
Same here. Marcus Magdaleno, I'll need a moment to review it as well.
And Travis, since we're all using your screen, this is Dixon. Can you scroll a little bit so we can see 1 and 2 also, please? Travis, this is Dixon. Can you scroll up just a bit while we're reading 3, just so we can see 1 and 2 as well?
I have. You should be able to see it.
Marcus Magdaleno, regarding item B3, my only input is the wording in the 3rd line, County of Mendocino that are listed in this report to officially adopt any of them and provide progress updates. I'm just not sure that's the best way to state it. Maybe that the County of Mendocino that are listed in this report for potential adoption. No, just any of them just sounds like just doesn't sound right. Just grammatically. So the content is good though. Maybe say that for official adoption and to provide progress updates. How does that sound?
Listen first. 4.
This Dixon, that looks better to me.
Marcus Magdaleno, one little thing too. The county planning and building services staff to work with the clerk of board to schedule quarterly reviews by the Board of Supervisors. That's fine. County planning and building services staff work with the clerk of the board to schedule quarterly reviews. John, you okay with that change?
This is John Gladwell. Yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah, I'm good with that. John Dixon.
Okay, any other further discussion on item B3?
I want to go back, if I can, this is Dixon, to just 1 and 2. I see that they're together, there's no space between, that's fine. I just want to suggest maybe after the word formed, the last word of the first, say, make it a comma instead of a period and say and. So comma and, so that ties them together. So that 2, if you were to read it on its own, it doesn't reference the ad hoc, and instead of saying it again, I think it calls it out as a second recommendation because they could do one or the other, and they may, but it ties them together so that when number 2 talks about the ad hoc, it references it to number 1, and it may automatically do that, but I just think that maybe makes it clear, it ties them together, if you guys agree.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm fine with that. It does seem a little format-wise, it does seem a little odd and different than any other format we've used in this report, but I'm okay with it, I guess.
Could you maybe, Travis, put a, do another hard return after and so that it,
Yeah,
Yes.
this is not actually formatted how it will be presented.
okay,
This is just for our purposes today.
all right.
So then, I mean, if we are going to list these as two separate, they'll be spaced accordingly. So then, therefore, would the and really be necessary? It should just, I think it should just end, and then a separate recommendation. It is recommended that ad hoc committee include a member of the county of board of supervisors. I suppose for the sake of consistency, we should also, at the end of item number 2, say the same thing if and when the committee is formed.
So this is Dixon. I just think each one should stand on its own or be tied to the other somehow. And I didn't like the 1A idea, so we changed it. I think 2, because they could do one or the other. And I think giving the option that it's only staff or both a supervisor, and maybe just a supervisor and not staff, I think they should be separate. But I think that, to say, what does it say now? This ad hoc, it needs to stand on its own. And I hope I'm not splitting hairs, but I feel like if it's a second recommendation, that it needs to stand on its own or be tied. And I think for simplifying, for simplicity's sake, rather, to say and ties it together sufficiently. Otherwise, then we have to, I would recommend stating what this ad hoc means, because it doesn't stand on its own then in number 2. So that's how I would do it. But
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm not big on the format of using the and, so I would lean more towards 2 separate recommendations, and that we state it similar to the first one, that that county staff or board of supervisors assign or include one member of their board to sit on this ad hoc committee.
okay, this is Dixon. Let me make another recommendation then. Let's just keep it 1. See what you think of this. So staff and, so the county shall assign staff and, we talked earlier about an elected official. So maybe we use that same language. So instead of having it be 2 different things, we say in number 1 and just have it 1, that it says assign staff and a supervisor of the board or an elected official, and then it's done. And then we get rid of number 2. What do you think of that?
Marcus Magdaleno, what other elected officials could that potentially include other than the board of supervisors?
Dixon, answering, I'm just using language that was in number 6 above. That's what it says. So I don't know. If there isn't anyone, then maybe we should say what we mean, which is one of the supervisors of the board of the county.
Well, for the sake of knowing what we're saying, if there are other potential elected officials that could sit on this board and we wanted to keep it open to them, then we should say elected officials. I'm just not sure what other elected officials would be potential to sit on this board. So I feel personally that it would be, I'd want a board of supervisor. Having been on the ad hoc committee that formulated the restructure of governance for the MCTC, I felt it very useful, very important that well, it was actually 2, but at least one of the board of supervisors was on there. So that way they were more involved and had more info regarding the matter. It seemed to be good. So that's why I specifically like to say a member of the board of supervisors. So seeing as Travis has inputted that, the county shall assign staff and a member of, should we say at least one member of the board of supervisors, or just specifically say 1?
So this is Caitlin Schaefer, and I just want to let you know that there are other elected officials with the county, including the tax collector and the clerk recorder. So you are broadening your scope if you use elected officials. The sheriff is also an elected official.
Marcus Magdaleno, I certainly wouldn't want to be exclusive to any other elected officials that might want to sit on this, but which potentially they could. If it's an ad hoc committee, my understanding is if someone wants to join the ad hoc committee, I guess it's dependent on how MCTC structures it. But I feel like this recommendation is to make sure that we have what we minimally recommend, which is staff and at least one supervisor. But if the rest of the board feels like we want to add also elected official to open it up, I'm certainly open to that discussion.
This is John Glidewell. I don't think we need to do that. That's my opinion, but I think it's more appropriate to invite the member of a board of supervisors to join. And, without mucking it up too much, I really kind of liked how simple it was originally with even the sub point. Now, I know we're not back there, but I don't want us to go too in depth because it's sort of referencing the previously recommended action item to MCTC, and if it's being read in order, it should be easy to follow. But not to say that anyone referencing the report will also read that section first, but I don't know. I would hesitate to make it too convoluted.
Marcus Magdaleno, I'm in agreement with John. And my one concern about adding it together in one recommendation is that if none of the members of the Board of Supervisors are not willing to sit on this ad hoc and they don't approve this or adopt this recommendation, then they won't be obligated to assign any staff as well. That's why I wanted to keep them separate. One recommendation to assign staff, one recommendation to assign at least one Board of Supervisors to the ad hoc committee.
This is John Glidewell. Yeah, I think that is preferred. I don't know that the way we structure it as a recommendation will have a better effect or an outcome. While we're recommending it, we've been recommending this to the Board of Supervisors, I think, for the last 3 reports, and it hasn't happened. So it's more likely that MCTC will form the committee, the ad hoc committee, and we'll hopefully get some work done on it with or without the help from the Board of Supervisors or staff. But just that it's intended to invite them and encourage that they participate is important in this recommendation. I don't know that it will come to fruition. So I think that's why, again, we were focusing on moving it towards the MCTC recommendation, and hopefully there'll be some progress after a few years now.
So, Marcus Magdaleno. So, John, do you feel that we should leave this as one recommendation that includes staff and Board of Supervisors in the one recommendation, or separate them into 2?
This is John Glidewell. I think we should separate them into 2. I'm just thinking that I don't know that we need to spend so much time splitting hairs on this one. I don't have a great deal of confidence that there will be participation yet from a member of the Board of Supervisors, given that they've had opportunities to do something like this in the last several reports and haven't followed up on it. So I think it's probably best, just as a recommendation, and we'll move on.
That is true, Marcus Magdaleno. That is true. In the past, it doesn't seem that the board has ever officially adopted any of the recommendations, but I have hopes that might change, that some of the attitudes of the Board of Supervisors would be to review this quarterly and adopt potential recommendations and get progress reports on them. And thus I want to move forward with that intention. And I feel it would be easiest for them to adopt a recommendation if it's clear and concise and not too convoluted. That's why I'm for separating. And I think we should just word it, the second recommendation, exactly as we did the first, that county assign a staff. And then the second one, that county assign at least one Board of Supervisor to be on the ad hoc committee. That's the way I would like to go with this. John or
Yeah, this is Dixon. So that's fine. I think separating them, I think, is fine. I'm just trying to keep it simple and clear. And to separate them, I agree with the point that they could do one or the other, and they're not tied together in some way. Although they could still do that the way it's written now. That's fine. To highlight it is good, and it could be either number 2 or A. If it's A, like I'm looking at it on the one that was sent out, not how it's showing now since the edits, but on the one we were sent, it says recommend that a member of the county supervisors. It might be as simple as just saying also be appointed, or A or 2 says also recommend that a member of the supervisors. So I just want it to be clear that it's staff and one of the supervisors, or at least one of the supervisors, to Marcus's point. That's all. And they keeping them separate is fine with me. We shouldn't spend too much time on it. Again, it is splitting hairs, but for me, again, in the beginning, it wasn't clear that what it was, just because how it's formatted or how it's written. But the whole point is that on that committee, that there's a staff person and also an elected official, at least one of the county board of supervisors appointed. And making them separate is great. And maybe we'll just leave it to Travis to, I think he's got the point. So he can wordsmith it and format it how he sees fit. That's fine.
Marcus Magdaleno. So then I think it sounds like we've decided to have them 2 separate recommendations, and to be each on its own clear, hopefully not referencing the one prior or the one in front. My suggestion for recommendation 2 would be that it state the Board of Supervisors appoint at least one member of their board to sit on this proposed ad hoc committee. So it can stand on its own, separate from number 1, but both of them referencing the proposed ad hoc committee.
This is Travis. Marcus, is it not clear enough as it is currently on my screen?
One moment. Yeah, I'm fine with that. John, are you good with the way that's worded? And you'll separate 1 and 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Dixon. Yeah, I'm good with that. Looks good.
John Gladwell, yes, I agree. Thank you.
All righty then. Moving on to item B4. So any questions or comments regarding B4? Travis, is this a little different than the one we got in the email?
We should be on B3. Oh, B4 now. Okay, I'm sorry. I see we already did B3. B4. I don't know. I don't have the other one up in front of me, so you'll have to tell me if it is different.
This is John Gladwell. Yes, the draft version is 2 sentences, so I need just a little bit of time to read this and catch up, if that's okay.
Let's take a moment to, Marcus Magdaleno speaking, let's take a moment to read through it.
Great, thank you. I need to step away from the computer for just a moment.
This is John Dixon. I've read it and I think it looks good. I know Travis is not there, but I'm done if you guys are ready to discuss.
Marcus Magdaleno. Yeah, it looks like Travis is back. I am ready to discuss, and I do have my opinion on this. Is, to me, I think we should separate this into two separate recommendations, because it does seem in the past that county hasn't been as what's the word, I don't want to say cooperative, but very willing to adopt this procedure, and I want to make it as simple for them as possible. I think it's first we get this data collection on the occupancy form that's filled out, and we get that going first. And then secondly, we recommend that we employ software upgrades and technical assistance to ensure enable the reporting of this data that's being collected. Two separate things. One, start collecting the data, because we can start collecting the data without having the ability to quantify it, as long as it's there. And then later down the line, I think it's more likely that we'll get them to at least do the first step of starting to collect the data, and then compiling it and finding a software system that can compile it and provide it is a separate recommendation. It's my opinion on this.
This is John. Oh, go ahead there.
I was just going to say that sounds reasonable to me, like a first step, second step. If there are two separate things, we want them both, but the first is sort of easier to implement, it sounds like, Marcus. Then separating them seems reasonable, yeah.
Marcus Magdaleno and Travis, we do have a mocked up version of that form that can be provided to them. Is that correct? Do we want to reference that in this?
It goes as an appendix.
Okay, great. And it's listed that it's referencing that appendix, or it will in the final report?
We don't generally list that something will be in an appendix, but I can.
If it's not generally done, I just want them to know that we've done the work for them if they want to just grab the form and use it. I'm sorry, you've done the work for them.
Sherry's she knows that we've done the form and she knows that she needs to adopt it. She's very clear on it.
All right. Marcus Magdaleno. Travis, can you clarify the last sentence in number 5? This software upgrade should include an online prepayment module.
That was something that you guys as a group suggested in the last meeting, so that it would take us away from, I guess, the full quarter payment and allow people to make allow lodging operators to make monthly payments should they choose. It's how I interpreted what you guys were getting at in the last meeting.
Marcus Magdaleno, that is correct. I feel like it should be its own separate recommendation, not muddled with the recommendation that they acquire the necessary software to compile the data collected on the TOT forms. Yeah, that was just a separate recommendation that they explore the possibility of of setting up a prepayment the same way the California does their sales tax. And so I definitely think that should be its own recommendation. John, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think separating them is good. I mean, again, reasonable because it's just more clear, and we're not worried about sticking under a certain number of recommendations. It's okay to have them. I think just being clear is important. So separating that is good with me.
Marcus Magdaleno, Travis, does the software referenced above actually correlate to the potential of an online prepayment module, or would they be two completely separate things?
Sorry, unmute. This is Travis. That would be something that I'd have to discuss with Sherry Shatmeyer.
So perhaps in this recommendation that we just separated, we don't reference the software. If that becomes the process they need to do, then that so be it. But I think it should just be clear that they explore the possibility of an online prepayment module to do prepayments. Now, I need to get input from the other board members, John and John. Should this potentially be part of a larger recommendation that we talked about that explores the effects on the county and the lodging owners from switching to monthly to quarterly? And I know we had talked about a recommendation to explore those effects, as we know what they are, and get input from the lodging owners, and then have recommendations of potentially what we could do given the results of that inquiry. That make sense?
This is John Gladwell. Marcus, I'm sorry. Could you ask that again? I got lost a little bit.
Yeah. So if this board feels that we should recommend that we should recommend the ability for a lodging owner to make monthly prepayments, then of course this is a good recommendation that should stay. But is that how this board's feel? Is that this board's feeling, or is it perhaps this board's feeling that we conduct some research and find out if the lodging owners are a little disgruntled from the change to quarterly, or if they're not, whether that online prepayment option would be something that they would favor or not. If the change to quarterly versus monthly has whether the 10% cancellation fee is or late fee is still valid or should be adjusted. These questions that would arise from getting data that is associated with the switch from monthly to quarterly. Was that a little more clear?
Yeah, this is John Gladwell. Absolutely. I feel like it's dangerous to assume the lodging community's position on these items, and the more data we can reference, the better it will be to make recommendations from. So I would prefer to recommend gathering some information and data on the position of the lodging community before recommending one way or the other. And that would be that's how I would prefer to approach it.
John Dixon, do you have any input?
Well, I was going to say if there is an online way to pay and people are given the option to do prepayment monthly, and it's not a burden for county to track that and all those different things, if they're open to doing it that way, that if it's already a simple thing sort of to do because it's automated, then just give the option without. I was going to say, yes, data is good, but it's also a whole task to do that. And even if only say 10 or 20% of the people do it, if it's not that much work, then it sort of works for everybody. If we could take the step of gathering data and then or recommending that that's done, that's a whole task. And then it's still in the end going to be just an option where they're not going to change it to a required monthly, but as an optional thing. Does it matter if it's 50% of the people or 10%? Maybe not. If they're willing to do it, meaning the county is willing to do it, then maybe we, don't take the step of gathering the data, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But it all depends on how much work that is and if there's a cost to it, if there's modules and different things like, I don't know anything about it. But if it's just a matter of having the option to pay monthly versus the required quarterly, and everybody and the county is okay with that, then it can't be a bad thing to give lodging operators the option. So how that's in here, I'm open to how it's in here. Again, I'm speaking from without any experience of how difficult that may or may not be to do the monthly option. If what you're saying is if it's assumed that it's difficult or there's a cost to it or whatever, that getting the data first is going to make it happen or not, then yes, the data is important. But if it's something that everyone's willing to do and it's not that difficult, doesn't have much cost associated with it, then let's just offer it as an option. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Marcus Magdaleno, that makes total sense. I guess that's why I'm wondering maybe that we should some type of recommendation where I know we have a lot of committees, but maybe another committee be formed to explore the effects of the change from, and I know that's referenced in item number 7, but I just feel like before we make any recommendations, I agree with John Glidewell that I feel like we're making a recommendation to change something that based on info that we don't have. My recommendation for this was to explore the possibility of an online prepayment module, and then I guess
clarify something for everybody that will probably end the conversation.
Yes, go ahead, Travis.
Sorry to jump in on you, Marcus, but I had a conversation with Sherry Schattmeyer this week talking about TOT and bid and payments and how that's going to work and what can be done for relief for lodging properties. And it just popped into my head something that she noted in that conversation. And that was that they cannot accept partial payments. And if we put this recommendation in here that it would be a monthly prepayment, that would be something that her office cannot accept.
Marcus Magdaleno here. This is by law that they're not allowed to accept prepayments on.
It's just that they do not have the capabilities to accept partial payments. They'd have to put them into a trust account. The system doesn't allow them to apply partial payments. So it would be, it's something that's just not an option for them. They either have to be monthly or quarterly.
I see. So the only possible recommendation we could put in here would be that they switch back to monthly, but I wouldn't want to make that recommendation without having direct input from the majority of the lodging owners as to whether that's what they wanted to do. So hearing that it's not at all a capability of the county to potentially implement a prepayment system such as the sales tax, California sales tax does, then it sounds like this recommendation should just be removed. John, and before you remove it, Travis, John and John, do you feel the same way?
Well, this is John Glidewell. I think this was a good discussion and we've learned some good things. So what we know is, and there is evidence that some lodging owners would prefer to have a monthly payment option. And I mean, even if that evidence is anecdotal, it could spark an effort to gather, more information, more data from the community. So if we have this information in front of us, do we want to consider creating a recommendation that helps us get a feel for what the entire community really does want to do? And So instead of disregarding it, I wonder if we want to kind of bat the idea around of ways where, hey, maybe there is a way to gauge the interest in switching back to a monthly. And since it can't be both, because I appreciated Dixon's comments that if it was easy, heck yeah, that'd be the way to go, then just do it. But if it, like Travis said, if it cannot be both, if it has to be one or the other, where it's currently just quarterly, how beneficial would it be to switch to monthly? We should probably find out the answer based on how the lodging community feels.
Marcus Magdaleno, I agree. I feel like we should be looking at item number 7 and elaborating on that. That we recommend that an ad hoc committee and county staff analyze and gather information as to the effect on lodging owners as to the change from monthly to quarterly, and address specific questions and issues that we have, like switching back to monthly, or what kind of effect it's had on, we'll just gather information regarding that, and so we have valid info and data to make better informed decisions and direction of which to go. So I guess my recommendation would be then, if we wanted to somewhat include the possibility of this prepayment or to switch back to monthly, that it be a subcategory of a possibility of an option to explore from the ad hoc committee that we're recommending.
I think we're circling and circling and circling 7. 7 is basically saying, go get the information and bring it back. Very, very simply.
Right, Travis. Marcus Magdalene here. It does say that, and I kind of wanted to give a little more direction of specifically of what a few things to look for, not to include, but not be excluded to, and then a list of things. Possible prepayment plan, switching back to monthly, whether the things along that line. So in fact, then we remove number 6 and create topics of inquiries for this ad hoc committee to explore in underneath number 7. John, do you feel that it would be necessary to list items that we feel that need to be explored, or to just leave it open-ended for this ad hoc committee to explore the effects of the change from switching from monthly to quarterly, and to explore any other changes that might be necessary?
This is Dixon. So Marcus, I'm going back and forth between what I have on my computer and then what is being, what Travis is doing there. And so I can't see above, but maybe I'm confused. The ad hoc that you're talking about now, is this the same ad hoc as in 1 and 2?
Marcus Magdalena here. It looks like, according to this recommendation, it is referencing the ad hoc committee that was formed for 1 and 2. It looks like, in a way, we're tasking them with one more thing, and that is to find a way to analyze and get info from the lodging owners, and analyze what effects and how have happened, and how the lodging owners feel about the change from monthly to quarterly, and if it's even feasible for the county to switch back to monthly. I mean, they might say it's impossible, which would make it a moot point. So we need to gather this information, and we need some group to search for it and gather it. And if the county, if it's a financial thing, I know that the county doesn't always use the 3% fee that to cover the expense that it costs to cover their time for calculating the work on the TOT and the bid. So if it's a matter of financing, then maybe they explore them using the whole 3% or necessarily. But if it's a matter of person power and they just can't do it because their hands are tied, then we need to know that. We need someone to find that out. And that's what this ad hoc committee could potentially find out. And also we need to know how the majority of the lodging owner feels about it. Because I don't know how the majority of the lodging owners feel about this switch from monthly to quarterly, and there was never any pre-work done to find out how it might affect people and how people felt about it. The county just decided to do it. So I think I just think a group find out that information is the purpose of this recommendation.
Okay, this is Dixon. Can I make a suggestion then? It's getting a little bit convoluted. I'm looking back at number 6 above, and it says, you know, the ad hoc committee is formed for a very specific thing, you know, investigating and exploring potential ways to enhance revenue for tourism promotion. And if we reference down below that, oh, by the way, we want to give them something else to do. So it feels it complicates it. And it should be referenced above. And here's what I would want to recommend. You know, because of everything going on right now currently, we're talking about using the MCLA list again and sort of reopening that. It's been in cold storage is the term that I used for that. But it is a organization, doesn't have valid anymore. The tasks aren't the same. There's no money going through it at all, of course. But there is a listserv, and there's an association that could be brought back, and we're talking about doing that. Some small group of us are talking about doing that anyway, and it might be then that it's just a simple survey from the association or from this listserv where lodging owners could just sort of say, you know, yes, I like the quarterly, I don't like it, I prefer the monthly, and that's data enough. You know, you get some responses there. So I don't know that it needs to be part of the ad hoc is what I'm getting at, and I feel like it's a little bit, it's just gathering some information. Now, I think something should be captured here, but the section we're talking about, B, is recommendations actionable by the county. And so it should be a recommendation for them to get the information. But we're talking about an ad hoc doing it, which is actually an ad hoc created by MCTC. So I don't feel like it belongs here. You know, I understand the intent. I do. I think that this is good, and maybe it's for this year, but maybe it's for next time. I'm not sure. What we're recommending the county to do in this next fiscal year, because what we're talking about here is gathering information so we can make a recommendation to them, and we don't have that done. We don't have that information yet. So I'm not sure where it leaves us, honestly, but
Marcus, go
I
ahead.
don't think I would recommend adding it as a task for the ad hoc. I feel like it would complicate that new group's tasks.
Marcus Magdaleno here. John Dixon, you make many valid points. And after rethinking it, yes, it does seem like maybe that should be something that is done by an organization in more direct contact with the lodging owners, whether that be MCTC or using the MCLA listserv. That sounds, maybe you're right, like more of a recommendation to MCTC, not to the county. Therefore, I would, I guess, recommend that we remove items 6 and 7. 6 because of Travis's information that he provided from Sherry, and 7 because of what John Dixon just mentioned. John Dixon and John Glidewell, are you amenable to that?
This is Dixon again. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't like to lose things. You know, it's nice to sort of have them there, even if they're not actionable this year, because we don't want to lose the idea. I think it's good. And if it's something as far as, well, let's say this: if MCLA, if there's an overwhelming, you know, data that says everybody, you know, a majority of people really want to have an option for the monthly, or to go back to the monthly and not do quarterly, you know, there's going to be a discussion there because of the workload, the monthly workload for the county, and I'm not sure what the impetus was to change it, but you know, once that data is gathered, then there's a talk. Then we can talk about, you know, how do we make it easier, and maybe there is an online payment system that makes monthly payments easier and more cost effective for staff or something like that. But maybe we need to gather the information first and then go to the next steps. So what I'm getting at is, you know, if we take them out, yes, fine, but let's not lose them, you know, even if it's just, we remember them, we keep them as we participate in whatever MCLA might do. We know that the point is to, do what works best for everybody, including some kind of automated system or that's, so yeah, taking it out is fine to answer your question, and let's just not lose the idea.
Marcus Magdalena here. Very noted, John Dixon. You're right. We shouldn't lose the idea. And for a moment, I thought maybe we create a new recommendation for MCTC, but I feel at this point the report is, is pretty thorough enough with its recommendations, and perhaps separately, MCTC staff and under the guidance of Travis, maybe with cooperation with John Dixon, who has the MCLA listserv, could formulate some type of survey. But I don't think at this point we need to include that in this report. But I would love to be involved in the formation of some type of survey that asks certain questions about the effect of the change from monthly to quarterly. But I suggest maybe we address that at a separate time as lodging owners with our DMO versus as the bid advisory board in this report. So that being said, I just want to confirm with John Dixon and John Glidewell that we are okay to remove those. It looks like we already moved 2, Travis. And it looks like we're going to move 3. Travis removed number 7 as well, as it was not an action item by the county. It was accidentally listed again from an action item from the Mendocino Tourism Commission. So are John and John, are you in agreement with that? Is okay to have removed items 6 and 7?
This is John Glidewell. Yeah, good discussion. The only comment I have is that was my hope, is we wouldn't lose some of this intent to find ways to improve lodging community. And great, maybe we can figure out a way to revive some of those priorities later on. But I agree, it's probably not the right time to include those in our recommendations. So totally good.
Okay, great. For the sake of time, we still have the report, the other portion of the report to review, and the budget. So if we feel confident that Travis has the info he needs to make the requested edits, then we can go ahead and leave the portion of the recommendation work to him and get a kind of an approval of the final draft regarding the recommendations. I don't think that needs to be an official vote. I think that if we are all in approval of the recommendations with the upcoming changes that Travis will make, that draft can go ahead and be reviewed by the MCTC board.
Can I ask a question? This is John Dixon. 2 things. Before we lose the idea here, Travis, I have a question for you. When on the quarterly and monthly payment thing, when the organization when lodging was paying monthly, the organization, there's a delay in when the organization gets money. It's budgeted money, so sort of transferred to it. Because it's quarterly, is there more of a lag? I mean, I'm trying to ask a simple question. I hope it's a simple.
I understand the question you're asking. Over the past few years that the quarterly has been in place, it became a longer and longer and longer lag time. So we were up to almost 5 months before I would receive a check, from a quarter. So I had a meeting with the auditor, controller, and the treasurer tax collector. We came up with a new system, and it's working really well.
Okay, so I didn't want to lose it because, when we talk about pros and cons, it's, for the county, it has to work for everybody, which includes, the DMO, includes the county and staff time and, ability to do it, monthly, and the lodging. And I just we should look at all the pros and cons as we go. And so I wanted to ask that question. The second question I have is, county staff is here. You guys are administering this meeting. Are we meant to be stopping at 3:30? Do we have a hard stop at 3:30?
The bylaws state the meeting is to end at 3:30.
Okay. So Marcus, I know we have other things to talk about, and also I am aware that you didn't see the other part of the document, which is there's a lot to it, and I know a lot of it's boilerplate, and of course then there's the numbers that we have to look at. Just a question: how do you want to use the last 15 minutes? What do you guys want to do?
Caitlin, this is Marcus Magdaleno. There's no exception to extending past 3:30.
I can pull up the bylaws and look at them and get back to you if you'd like to continue the meeting until I'm able to get you an answer.
Okay. I am, given that we will have the opportunity to make any potential last minute changes in our next meeting, and after the MCTC board has had a chance to review it and give input, I would trust the judgment at this point of John Dixon and John Glidewell for us to quickly go through and look at any questions, comments, or notes that you two had regarding this this document, and then try to do a quick review of the budget. I think that's how we should spend. So let's see if we can. John, do you have a lot of notes that you've compiled from reviewing the annual report?
This is John Glidewell. Marcus, I just made 2 notes from reviewing the report. So I have just a couple of things to go over. It won't take long. And, like you said, we could do those and see where we're at. We also have the meeting on April 17th, I think next week, that we can spend to finalize more stuff.
John Dixon, how many do you have?
Yeah, so a question on that. So we could maybe do the budget, because Marcus, that would be maybe a quick thing to do. We've all looked at that. My question is, between now and the 17th, am I right that the MCTC board is going to be given this draft document to give notes to, and then we would take those in a meeting next week? Is that right?
Correct. So the MCTC board will see this at their Tuesday meeting, April 14th. I would say historically, they haven't, in my tenure, they haven't made any changes. They've accepted it and appreciated your work very much. And on we go. Okay.
So I see also, so another question, the document that we have in our packet, is that as final as it is, has, the recommendations had changes?
There's no changes in the this document that's on my screen since it's been sent to you guys.
Okay, unlike the other one, which had some edits, the one we're looking at is the most recent.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So
Great, Mark Magdaleno here. John, you're right. I think we should, as we've all reviewed the budget, we should quickly go through that, and then whatever remaining time we have, we can go through any notes that we have regarding the report. If that sounds good to you guys, let's do that, because we have 10 minutes left.
John Glidewell, that sounds good.
Yep.
Let's pull up the budget and discuss that. So we're moving on to agenda item 6B. And while you're pulling that up, Travis, quick question as to whether the Finance Committee has adjusted this budget from to address the economic impact of the COVID pandemic, or is this the same?
This is the same. They have not chosen to. This has been approved by the Finance Committee and is going to the board this next week, and they will do an adjustment once we have an end date to the shelter in place.
Okay. So then we're looking at a budget that will be changed.
I would like to say that they have directed me to budget extremely conservatively this year, as opposed to the past 2 years.
Prior to the information and effects of the COVID, correct? Yeah.
This is John.
Go ahead, John Glidewell.
Oh, sorry, Marcus. I just had a follow-up for Travis. This is John Glidewell. Have they given you any direction on whether or not contingency funds will be put in place for this?
I'm sorry, can you ask again? I had to run and close the door. The yard man started blowing.
Yeah, no problem. Has the finance committee given you any direction on whether or not they are looking to use the contingency funds?
Yes, that is a possibility, depending on how long the SIP goes.
And follow-up question, has there been any analysis on how far those contingency funds will take us with whatever's deficient in the budget from, contributions that are affected from the pandemic?
We did discuss that today, and I'm taking some questions back to our accounting firm in the next tomorrow, and to have more answers for them at the board meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Marcus Magdaleno, so given that this is the budget formed and potentially it might be kept, depending on how this plays out, it might be kept and used to supplement using contingency funds. Has there been any changes, Travis, to this budget since we last reviewed it in the last meeting?
No, there have been no requested changes from my board or finance committee.
Okay. So this budget that we reviewed in the last committee, in the last meeting, had or had not yet been approved, finalized by the finance committee?
It has been finalized as of this morning.
Okay. But no changes. So given that, John and John, that we've had a chance to review this in the last meeting and there were no changes to it, do you have any questions or further input regarding this budget?
I do not. This is Dixon. No.
Also, I do not, John Gladwell.
Okay, and I think we've thoroughly reviewed the budget as is. So let's go to.
With that, just so you know, I will take this and put it into the correct format for the bid advisory report. So it will be a much condensed version when you see it in the full report next week.
Travis, this is John Gladwell. Is that green and orange table that's in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I have an answer to the question regarding the bylaws.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
The bylaws state business shall be conducted from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at the latest. The time may be changed or extended by unanimous consent of the advisory board members present. If not so extended, business shall be adjourned to a date, time, and location other than described above by consent of a majority vote of the advisory board members or continued to the next regularly scheduled meeting. So you can extend it by unanimous decision, since at this point, all three of you together make a quorum.
So does one of the board members want to make a motion to extend the meeting, or do we feel that we could cover the report in 6 minutes?
I move to extend it until 4 p.m. And we can adjourn early if that extra time is not needed.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion regarding this motion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. John Dixon.
Aye.
John Gladwell.
Yes.
Marcus Magdaleno is a yes. Motion carries to extend the meeting to 4 p.m. And since we have a little more time, can we take a quick 3-minute break? If anyone's not amenable
This is
to that.
John Gladwell. That's fine with me.
Okay, quick break. Travis, thanks for catching the missing letter in my name. Appreciate it.
Okay, are we back?
Marcus Magdaleno is here and ready. Looks like we lost our county staff.
Okay, John Dixon's here.
I think,
John Gladwell's here.
and I'm here taking notes, so we can continue on and wait for them. They can come back. Oh, there they are.
Hey, so, okay, meeting's off of break, back to order. I have one concern I'd like to share, and I'm curious to see if John and John share this concern. You know, we put our approval on our approval on this report, and I guess I just realized I have a little concern approving a report that includes a budget that hasn't been adjusted to account for the economic effect of the COVID virus. I just have a little concern about that. Not even, you know, I thought maybe that there had been some reworking being done by the finance committee to, you know, potentially estimate 2 months worth or 3 months worth of income loss and adjustment. But does anyone else share my concern?
Yeah, this is John Dixon. I would say, I mean, here's how I look at it. At some point, you got to put a pin in stuff, right? So we have to get this report in. And I think, you know, in this case, probably a footnote would work. And I think what Travis explained, what the organization is doing, makes total sense to me. That until it's known how long it's going to go, I mean, you'd have to, so far, you know, that sort of, you know, half of March and all of April is going to be, you know, tanked. But beyond that, how can you do the work? You know, how can you do a forecast? So waiting until, you know, it's reasonable to wait until the shelter in place is over and then make adjustments. You know, I think stating that maybe as a footnote or as sort of at the top of the thing in big red letters, maybe not a footnote, maybe big red letters, you know, it is fine. Again, just sort of putting a pin in it. And then this is the baseline, and then everything's going to adjust from it based on the reality of what's sort of happening. But because it's so unknown, Marcus, how can we, you know, make any projections? So that's where
Holly
I'm.
stopped me actually because I had spent the last 2 weeks trying to adjust and adjust and adjust, and finally she was like, "Dude, can you actually go do something else? Stop adjusting a budget that you don't know when what you're adjusting. Go do some work, do some social media stuff, get your reports written, get all that done. When we have an end date, then we can adjust the budget and go from there."
Marcus Magdaleno. Okay, yes, that makes total sense. Thank you. And that makes me feel better. But I do think that we should, as John Dixon said, state that this is a budget created prior to the pandemic. And once the pandemic has subsided or has an end date, or once business as usual is back, the budget will be readjusted. So I don't know where that would normally live, at the top of the budget, in the report or below. But as long as it's something is said, that would make me feel better.
Well, this is John Gladwell. Marcus, yeah, I'm sympathetic to those comments as well. And I totally agree that we should include a footnote that we have time. We know that it's here because we're living it. And if this report is published within that time frame, for us to ignore it, I think, you know, would be missing important content for the report. So, yeah, we can't choose how to spend money we don't know we have, but we can make a comment that addresses that uncertainty. So at least those reading the report later on will know that we're in a holding pattern, you know, and that is the only comment that I made in preparation for this meeting about the annual report, is looking at the proposed budget for the new fiscal year, is to highlight a section underneath that explains where we're at.
Thank you, John Gladwell. Marcus Magdaleno, yes. Travis, can you formulate something to address that? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's go through the report. I suggest that we address any as a whole instead of just going through it page by page, that we just address any notes, questions, and comments that members of the board have regarding this.
A question,
is-
John Dixon. Oh, sorry. Just at the top, just a question for, when reading this, the executive summary will come after final changes. Travis, is that something you're going to draft once it's presented to the board? Is that what you mean?
So generally, that would be something that the chair of the board takes the report and writes the summary. Now, if you would like me to do that, I'm happy to.
If it's traditionally in the past been responsibility of the chair, I suppose I should continue with that. So if I
Because I'm not the executive to summarize.
Huh.
If it were an MCTC report, that would be correct, but I'm just MCTC staff writing the report on your behalf.
So in the past, then last year it was Wendy who wrote the executive summary?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I will put that on my to-do list. Sorry that I was not aware of that, but I will get that done.
This is John Gladwell. I was not aware of that either. Marcus, if you need help, let me know. I'll be happy to help.
Appreciate it. Thank you, John. Actually, on second thought, since we have the report in front of us, why don't we just continue to scroll down? And if at any point, scroll down slowly, and if at any point a board member has question or comments or input, to speak up. And Travis, if you could, as you go through it, maybe just verbalize quickly what we're seeing, what the section is.
Sure. So this is the overview. How about I tell you what's boilerplate, and then I'll stop when we get to a narrative spot that I've written. So overview, boilerplate, impact of lodging and tourism. I update just these two numbers as well as the amount of jobs. This is a little narrative that I put in. This is boilerplate other than the number changes. The establishment and requirements of the lodging bid, that's just all standard. Historical overview. This, the only change under the historical overview is my edition of 2019 here. Our current organizational chart.
Travis, question for you.
Yep.
Do you have any staff that are currently contractors, or is every staff member on payroll?
Every staff member is on payroll, but currently all staff members are on furlough. I am the only active member of the MCTC team at this point.
Okay.
This is all standard, stays in every year. Accomplishments. This is something that I've added. These are my my words.
Accomplishment for 18-19 fiscal year. Travis, forgive me, I've forgotten. When did you join the organization?
18. June of 2018.
Oh, right at the start of the fiscal year, basically.
Yes. And you guys can let me know when you're ready for me to scroll further.
Marcus is ready.
Yeah, Marcus, you go ahead. I'll chime in if I mean, you go ahead and control the scroll. I'll go ahead and chime in if I need to stop.
Well, Travis is in control of the scroll. Yeah, let's just go ahead and continue on. And if Travis, if you hear from one of us to stop because we need a moment to read or because we have,
Sure.
we'll just
So
try-
right here, just so you know, there is a graph coming, and this is what we base our financial performance against the industry average. Those numbers come from Destination Marketing DMAI. DMAI, because of this situation, they usually publish those numbers in the beginning of March. They have not published those numbers as of yet. I'm checking every morning to see if those comparable numbers have been published. And to this moment, they have not. As soon as they are, I will insert the graphs.
Travis is Marcus Magdaleno. Just out of curiosity, since we don't have the graphs to look at, in comparison with other comparable DMOs, like where are we with, for example, payroll? Are we right in line with?
Well, so it's not the graph itself; it's the numbers that I don't have to compare to. The graph is something we make in-house. I should have been more clear about that. I know last year, under a very similar budget, or the fiscal year prior, under a very similar budget, we were below all of the industry standards and above the in administration and other costs, and above industry standards in programming costs. I expect us to be fairly in line with that again, because we used the same amount of, same budget basis.
Okay, and are we, Ms. Marcus Magdaleno, is the structure that MC or VNC uses comparable to other DMOs in terms of how many, what's responsible for payroll staff and what's contracted out?
Yes, we follow Destination Marketing International's best practices.
All right, great, thank you.
Again, so now we're to a boilerplate section. And then this preliminary plan is where I jumped in again.
And this is John Gladwell. This is where I identified as maybe a good area for us to add that footnote for the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, John Glidewell. So are we, I'm for that as well. If it is involved with our strategic direction, a quick mention.
Yeah, and excuse me, I guess I was looking at letter D for proposed budget, not letter A, so I apologize.
Okay. And all of these are directly out of my marketing report, these statements that I've made or what have you. I did address COVID-19 here with regard to, tourism. Then we go into estimated bid assessment.
Marcus Magdaleno, is the estimated bid, obviously this is previous the pandemic?
Yes.
So do we want to note that again? I'm just thinking in the future, if someone were to refer back to this, knowing whether this was the adjusted because of the pandemic or whether this
Well,
was the
so
pre-pandemic.
this addresses the budget contained in the bid report.
Mhm.
Based on assessments from 2018-19, the county matching funds for the same period are. So if it just, I mean, how many times do you want to address it about the same thing?
Hmm.
You might address it in the executive summary as well.
Oh, yes, that is actually a good point. I will do that. Thank you, Travis.
Mm-hmm. So then it just goes through how the matching funds work. And then the proposed budget. And it just is basically very simple. Here's the number. Here's the amount of contingency that we're supposed to have based on the contract requirements with the county. And then this is where the condensed budget will go. And we can, I have noted to add something big up here that says pre end of pandemic. And then the recommendations go here. And then after that are the appendix.
Travis, this is Marcus Magdaleno with a question back up to the budget summary. These categories mirror the collapsed large categories in the detailed budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay, and was that the end?
That's the end, because the recommendations go into just plopped right in there. And then following the recommendations are the appendix.
I have a formatting question. This is in Word, is it? I mean, it looks good, is what I want to say. I think the colors are good, the formatting is good. Are you doing it in InDesign? I'm curious.
We are doing it in InDesign, but every year at the first meeting, John, you ask if we can have it in a format that is editable by everybody. So I put it into Word, and we will take it out of Word and put it in Design and make it look real pretty like last year's did.
I see. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, if that's not too difficult, seeing as we move forward, track changes and things like that. And I know that it's mostly the recommendations section that we work on. Obviously, we've been spending many meetings on that, but this, it looks good even in this format. So well done. And I don't have any other comments here. The only one I would say is, the recommendations are kind of, because a lot of the rest of it, besides the budget and things and some other things, are boilerplate. I don't want to complicate things, but I hate burying things that are sort of the most important. When we're asking the county to do things and stuff like this, it ends up essentially on the last page, before the appendix. That is, it's like burying the most important part, if you will, sometimes, or the actionable part, let's say. So I'm not suggesting that we would change everything, not this year certainly, but the idea of sort of the whole point of the thing, if you will, sometimes can be these recommendations. At least that's what we spend the most time on, putting them closer to the top. I wonder if that's something that we would consider in the future, but I don't want to extend the meeting. I don't want to make a big deal about it. It's
right.
Just
Am I unmuted? I am unmuted. John, I think that's a really good point. And Caitlin, if you would take that back to Adrian and find out the history of how the report's written, and if the county requires it to be in this certain order, or if the order can be changed.
Marcus Magdaleno, and when we have that info, we can explore future reports as to whether we want to restructure it or not. Travis, Marcus Maglano again. Travis, I presume that, so the report that we kind of basically have finalized the draft today, this draft will go to the MCTC for review and their input. Is it going to be separate pieces as we've been looking at today, or are you going to be able to supply one document that has all the pieces listed in it?
It will be one document. Because of formatting issues and the recommendations are the ones that we work on the most, I did not put those into the report while we're still working on them. Now that we've got those basically complete, I'll move them into the report because it won't change page spacing and all of that very much from now on. So that's why I kept it out as a separate document.
Okay, great. And you're not under any timeline to get a document that can review the MCTC meeting on Tuesday?
Well, because of the this is just going for review and comment. There's no action on it, so it doesn't have to be posted 72 hours.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. Thanks. I always forget about the Brown Act rules.
I live and breathe them.
Well, I wasn't able to make it to the retreat this year to review them, but okay, John, do you have any other further comments regarding this draft?
This is John Glidewell. I do not. Just a reminder, we have 10 minutes left remaining in our extended time period.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like we are pretty much done. Travis, I'll do my best to have that executive summary to you. When are you going to put post the report?
So, Caitlin, when do I need to have the almost final draft to you for posting for the 14th? I have a feeling this is going to be my weekend project.
For the 17th, I have to have it posted no later than noon on the 14th.
Okay, that's doable. That gives me Monday. With that being said, you guys, it might not be an InDesign by then. It might be a Word document that we'll be looking at. And yeah, I don't know that I can accomplish that. That's a tall task.
Okay.
This is John Dixon. I think that's fine. I mean, content's the most important thing. It's the main thing, especially for the board and what they're doing on Tuesday, and then what we're doing as well. So for me, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Travis, this is Marcus. I'll do my best to have an executive summary to you by Sunday. When do you think you'll post it for the MCTC meeting?
I'll probably just drop it in that day.
Okay, good. So if I get it to Monday at the latest is fine?
That would be fantastic. I would really appreciate that.
Okay. I'll do that on Monday. Okay. Unless there's any more discussion on any agenda items 6A or B, moving on to agenda item 7, matters from the advisory board. Do we have any matters from the advisory board? Hearing none, we'll be moving on to agenda item 8, adjournment. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
John Glidewell, I'll move to adjourn.
Yeah, there you go.
Marcus Maglano, I'll second. And meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all so much for your time and help with this report. I really appreciate it. And we'll get this. It'll be posted by Tuesday so you can review for our Friday meeting.
Thanks so much, Travis.
Thanks, Travis. What time is the board meeting on Tuesday?
1 p.m.
And where is it?
Oh, go ahead.
Is it going to be done by Zoom as well?
It's a Zoom meeting, yes, and the information can be found on the MCTC or MendocinoTourism.org website under board meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Travis, could I request?
Can I get a roll call vote?
For adjournment?
For the adjournment, please.
Okay, so we're not officially adjourned, it sounds like yet. And one last question. Travis, could I request that you send the bid advisory board members a link to the Zoom meeting for the MCTC board,
Sure.
if it's not too much trouble?
No, not a problem at all.
Easier for me to find in my email than it is on the county website.
Thanks, Travis.
Okay, motion to.
Also, as a reminder, all three of you would not be able to participate in that meeting as you would constitute a quorum.
Correct.
Participate. So could two board members listen while one participated, or is by their
That would
presence?
be a meeting.
It would be a.
That would be considered a special meeting, so no more than two.
Okay, I'll sit out. This is John Gladwell. I'll get the footnotes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Wow. So the three of us can't be together in one place. Otherwise, it's an official bid meeting. Even though our bylaws state a specific time and date.
Yes, because anytime a quorum is present in the same place, it constitutes a meeting, which has to be publicly noticed.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know.
Even if we're,
Okay.
Coffee together.
even if we're 6
Okay.
feet apart, that's a joke.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time. We need a roll call vote to adjourn. John Dixon,
Aye.
John Glidewell,
Aye.
and Marcus Magdaleno is an aye. Meeting
Motion
adjourned.
carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks.